Compton Street. We're not too far from Restaurant Row. When's the last time you ate, anyway?
Please, let's not add eating to the list of things to nag me about.
I'm sorry, I have no time for visitors today.
You're Albert Martin's mother, aren't you?
Who are you?
Miles Fordham. I spoke with Albert, and he told me to give you a message. He said to tell you that St. Roch's dog is barking.
Oh, I see. That's good, that's very good. You better come in, Mr. Fordham. Standing on the street just won't do. Welcome to my home, Mr. Fordham. I am Sabine Martin. I hope you understand that Albert has nothing to do with this awful business. Would you care for some tea?
Well, her tune certainly changed when you gave her that message. I wonder what it meant.
No, thank you, ma'am. I won't be staying long. I've got a few questions for you, Mrs. Martin.
I'll try to answer them the best I can.
Do you think your son is capable of doing what he stands accused of?
Never. Albert wouldn't harm a fly.
That's what the mothers always say.
Why don't you tell me a bit more about him then?
He started working at the university laboratory a few years ago. I was so proud of him. The university is quite selective, you know. The same for its staff as well as its students.
Yes, I've gotten that impression.
I always told Albert to be careful around those high society types, but that one always thinks with his heart first.
Is she sure that's the correct body part?
He's all the family I have, Mr. Fordham.
Do you know anything about Madame Laura Dupre?
I never met her in person, but I know plenty about her.
Like what?
Nothing fit for a polite conversation, Mr. Fordham. But I can tell you this. Laura Dupre has far more enemies than she lets on.
Does that include you or your son?
It most certainly does not.
What do you know about Juliette, Madame Dupre's daughter?
I know Albert was smitten with her, no matter that I told him to be very careful around her kind. Those rich Creole families don't care much for people like us. To them, we're just a help. But from his telling, Juliette sounded to be a decent soul. It's a shame the same can't be said for her kin.
If you'll indulge my curiosity, what exactly was the meaning of Albert's message?
Saint Roch is the patron saint of dogs, as well as the falsely accused. If he sent the message along with you, it means he trusts you, and that I should too.
Oh, I see.
Perhaps you were hoping for something more? That's just the way of mysteries, isn't it?
How do you mean?
The thrill of the unknown is always more exciting than the truth. Mystery makes life a little more interesting.
True, but if mysteries were really better unsolved, I wouldn't have a job. What exactly is it you do, Mrs. Martin?
I provide services to the public.
A delightfully vague answer if there ever was one. Give me something a bit more specific, please.
I'm a Mambo Asugwe. That means I'm what you call a voodoo queen. I'd give you a detailed explanation of the responsibilities and duties of the role, but your time would be better spent clearing my son's name.
Can you tell me a bit more about your religious practices?
What I can tell you is that the ignorant whites in this city are afraid of us for no reason. Voodoo is not about black magic or dark spells or turning people into the living dead. It's about healing and life. Naturally, there are misguided souls who may try to use it for ill purposes, but I am not one of those.
Sounds like you hit a sore spot. Might be a good idea to stop pressing her on this angle.
I think I'll take you up on your offer for tea, after all.
All right, Mr. Fordham. You'll have to give me a few minutes to heat up the kettle. I'll be back shortly.
Amazing! Even more voodoo stuff back there. Why would she keep these particular items hidden from view?
Good question.
They obviously have some importance to her. I'd suggest asking, but I don't know if that's the best idea given how sensitive she seems to be about the subject.
The tea should be ready in a few minutes, Mr. Fordham. You can help yourself once it's done.
You're very kind, Mrs. Martin.
Interesting. Those pots look as though they've been wrapped in tobacco leaves. That pattern resembles a flower. Too bad it isn't an Easter lily. It's some old man with a dog standing at the center of a crossroads. If that's meant to have any sort of significance, it's completely lost on me. A rather unremarkable book collection, I'm sorry to say. That statue, on the other hand, gives me the willies. The Virgin Mary? I must admit she was the last person I was expecting to see in here.
I've got a few questions.
I'll try to answer.
Thank you for your...
My pleasure. Aren't you going to have your
I'm afraid I just remembered something important I need to look into.
suit yourself?
Doctor, may I ask you a few questions?
Please be my guest.
Tell me about Madame Dupre.
She is a great woman and a pillar of the community. I cannot imagine why something like this could happen to her, or how someone could be capable of such a barbaric feat. Though this ordeal has been terrible, I am confident she will overcome. The power of her physical constitution is surpassed only by her strength of character.
Do you think he'd say the same things if he wasn't on her payroll? I highly doubt it.
What were the circumstances surrounding Madame Dupre's supposed death?
Her son, Andrew, sent for me a few days ago after finding her unconscious and unresponsive. As I was unable to detect a pulse or breath, I had no other recourse but to declare her deceased. I judged that Madame Dupre had likely suffered a sudden cardiac arrest. It was most shocking to be proven wrong at a funeral.
I can imagine. Where was the funeral held, by the way?
St. Denis Cemetery. Madame Dupre wished to be interred in the tomb of her father's family, name of Chesterton.
Perhaps I'll go have a look. Did you examine Madame Dupre after she reanimated?
Of course. Physically, she appeared to be in fine health aside from minor dehydration. I found no marks or bruising on her body. Mentally is a different story, however. She's remained in an unresponsive state ever since.
Do you have any opinions on what caused Madame Dupre to appear dead?
The most likely cause I can imagine is some sort of poison or toxin.
What leads you to believe Madame Dupre was poisoned?
The symptoms she experienced were consistent with prior cases of poisoning I've studied. And didn't the young man arrested have ties to some kind of black magic cult? There have been reported cases of these practitioners using poisons to make people appear dead, then commanding them to do their bidding. I recall reading about a man in the West Indies who was given tetrodotoxin, that's the toxic secretion from a pufferfish, declared dead and buried. He appeared alive in his village some 20 years later.
Doesn't that seem a bit far-fetched to you, Doctor?
Facts are facts, Mr. Fordham. Surely someone in your line of work can appreciate that.
How long have you been Madame Dupre's private physician?
5 years, and I've been practicing medicine for the past 30. I still spend a couple of days a week treating patients at Riverview Asylum.
Oh, good. Maybe if you're lucky, he could be your doctor someday.
30 years is quite a long time. You must have seen some incredible advances in the field of medicine.
I have, yes. I can only wonder how things will change with all this talk of ethericity. There's speculation it can be used to restore necrotic tissue and instantly heal broken bones, among other things. If you ask me, a good bloodletting will never go out of fashion.
Those are all the questions I've got for now.
I hope I answered them adequately.
Oh, hello. Are you the new servant?
No, I'm Miles Fordham. I'm a private investigator looking into your mother's attempted murder.
How did you know I was her son? Oh, of course. You must have sensed it with your detective's intuition. I should have guessed by that giant head of yours.
Are you feeling all right, Mr. Montgomery?
Yes, I'm fine. Much better than when those pesky police officers were snooping around earlier. But I like you, Mr. Fordham. I can already tell you're not like them at all. Please, call me Andrew.
Yes, well, I'll have a look around and I may need to ask you some questions. Do you think you can handle that?
I can. In fact, I really look forward to it.
If the good doctor gave him a mild sedative, I'd hate to see what the stuff you take would have done to him.
I have some questions for you.
Oh, goody.
How do you typically spend your days, Mr. Montgomery? What are your interests?
Oh, a little of this and a little of that. Nothing as exciting as what you do, I'm sure. Ooh, tell me, do most bad people start crying when you catch them? I'll bet it's a laugh riot to see them sobbing away.
No, Mr. Montgomery, most of them don't.
Well, that's a real shame, isn't it?
What can you tell me about Madame Dupre?
She came back from the dead. I couldn't believe it. My mother, resurrected, just like Jesus.
Yes. I heard you're the one who accused Mr. Martin of the crime.
Oh, no, I already talked to the police about that. I don't want to think about it right now.
That's a rather exotic bird you've got.
I like looking at him. He has such pretty colors, doesn't he?
That he does.
You know, I've always wondered what he might taste like. Is that bad, do you think?
I really couldn't say, Mr. Montgomery. What can you tell me about your sister, Juliet?
I'm reminded of a famous quote, Mr. Fordham. Parting is such sweet sorrow. Let us part on good terms and avoid the subject altogether, please.
Thanks for your time.
No, thank you for yours.
This is ridiculous. He won't be of any use in this state. If it takes him as long to snap out of it as it takes you, we'll be waiting around here until noontime tomorrow. There has to be a way to bring him back to his senses. Maybe that quack outside knows something of use.
Doctor, may I ask you a few questions?
Please be my guest.
May I ask exactly what kind of sedative you gave Andrew?
A simple tincture of laudanum. It's what I give all my nervous patients.
He seems a bit out of sorts.
Hot? Meat kettle.
It can have that effect, but it usually wears off in half a day or so.
Is there a way to bring him out of his condition sooner?
A stimulant would have the opposite effect, but I wouldn't recommend mixing the two. It could have potentially harmful effects on his heart.
Oh, of course. I wasn't planning on doing anything of the sort. I was just curious.
It's cute how you act like you have no experience in these matters. It's almost convincing.
Those are all the questions.
I hope...
What a beautiful parrot. Must have cost the Dupre's a cool copper. This is always my favorite part of detective work.
Nothing inside but a bunch of extra doilies.
Ugh, how disappointing. Maybe you should steal one, just to spite Madame Dupre for not giving us any good clues.
No, Bill.
You're no fun, Miles. Goodness, someone went overboard with the flowers. This brings back some memories, doesn't it?
Ones I'd rather forget.
Oh, look! It's one of those new audio cylindergraphs. I can't quite wrap my head around how they can manage to get sound out of a wax cylinder. It must be a nice place to sit and listen to music. I don't know much about art, but I see Madame Dupre and I at least have similar tastes. It looks as though this folded piece of paper is being used as a bookmark.
These should be useful.
Dr. Tennyson's Vigor Pills. These would make a sloth act like a hummingbird.
The bottle is empty.
I hope remembering what page they were on wasn't too important.
Looks like it's a letter for Andrew.
Is this really the best that medical science has to offer? I've never seen so many beauty products together in one place. Doesn't look like they get used much, though.
Let's have a look through these papers. Aha, what's this?
So, Juliet is renting a room in the Chum. That's certainly interesting. I can't wait to see what sort of dirty secrets she's got hidden away in there.
Locked. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised.
One of those melodramatic romances. I read it a while back, and I couldn't tell you a thing about it. Now that one sounds interesting. I was always a fan of Bedletter's short stories. Doesn't appear to be very brief if there's 2 volumes of it. I wonder if anyone outside the family would find this even remotely interesting. Choice and consequence. Who in their right mind would write a book about that? I don't even want to know what that one's about. I read that one last year. If you ever wanted to know the intimate details of a buffalo's anatomy, I highly recommend it.
It would appear that Madame Dupre was taking music lessons.
Her current predicament has probably put an end to that venture, though. That's an old uniform, from the turn of the century by the look of it. This must be Madame Dupre's first husband. Kinda strange that she'd still keep his portrait in the bedroom. Seems Madame Dupre fancies herself a poet.
Well, that was life-changing.
For once in my life, I'm completely speechless.
Then perhaps I should take this with me and read it more often. Nah. Let's see if there's anything in these drawers. Damn, nothing but personal effects and more stationery.
Don't forget the first rule of detective work. If there's nothing useful inside, check underneath and between.
Ah, yes, of course. Thanks for the reminder.
Now this is intriguing. A much younger Madame Dupre. I suppose that's a nice alternative to a mirror. You've got some huge bags under your eyes, Miles. Reminds me of the case we had on that strange train.
Don't remind me.
A horrible little porcelain figurine. Madame Dupre didn't strike me as the type to play with dolls.